The Pathfinder War of the Immortals class playtest is out, and we finally have a little bit of information about things we can do. We're going to go ahead and start with the playtest, and I'm going to be looking over here a little bit because I have notes on that side. The playtest is going to run from now until October 2nd, 2023. They are looking for feedback, and you can go to PathfinderPlaytest.com in order to submit that information to them. But this is looking to be released. Pathfinder War of the Immortals is looking to be released in winter 2024. Now, that being said, my name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. So it took a little bit to get this document. I kept getting 504 errors every time I tried to download because a bunch of people were trying to download it all at once. But I have this as well as the remaster character sheet, and we'll do a glance at that as well before we end this video. But just some information at the beginning. So we do have here the playtest will run until October 2nd, 2023. So that's how much time we have to kind of create characters, throw them in campaigns, see how they play, see what we think is broken. And this is going to be for the source book, Pathfinder War of the Immortals, which is scheduled for release in winter 2024. Super interested in that particular AP. This is kind of a theme that I haven't seen a lot of, at least in the Pathfinder D&D space necessarily. I'm sure I'll get corrections on that, and people will say that this has been done before, but in my experience, this will be a new theme for me, and I'm really looking forward to it. Once you've had a chance to try it, there are a few places you can go ahead and look. There are the surveys and SurveyMonkey, 2 of them, and you can also go to the forums on paizo.com and go to the playtest subforums, and you can do discussions and announcements on there. So let's go ahead and start getting into the actual classes themselves, and we're going to go ahead and start with the Animist. So if you watched the live on Thursday, then you saw a little bit of this, but this is the Iconic. The Iconic for the Animist is Samo. Samo is of Icemark, a middle-aged Varki woman from the lands of Lenorm Kings, which is in the northmost reaches of the Inner Sea region. She is a Nephilim, a mortal being with a touch of celestial planes in her bloodline, and she is able to see spirits and other entities that others could not. She was selected to learn from the elders of Seer's Home at a young age after her abilities help her save her village from a Krishtaka incursion. And she was also proclaimed to be a sage after she successfully bonded with her grandmother's spirit, an apparition known as the Custodian of Groves of Gardens. And we will be able to look at that custodian here in a little bit. So we have a little bit about Samo herself, but then we get into the Animist class itself. So I've highlighted a few things that I found interesting as I was going through, but we'll kind of touch on high points of pretty much everything. So your key attribute is going to be wisdom, and your hit points are 8 plus your constitution modifier. Makes sense. During combat encounters, you're going to be channeling the power of spiritual entities called apparitions to cast potent spells and manipulate the battlefield to your advantage. You also have your own divine magic as well, and we'll explain that when we get to the spellcasting section. And you also get spells from your apparitions to cast down your enemies, sustain your allies, detect hidden threats, and lessen harmful effects. During social encounters, you are more than likely to watch and listen as opposed to be an active participant. Although for story reasons or for flavor reasons, you can be whatever you want. You let the whispers of spirits and otherworldly beings guide you towards sound judgment. You may call upon the wisdom of an apparition particularly attuned to an issue at hand, relying on its expertise where your own falls short. I could totally see playing this as someone who is in a conversation with a group of people and then all of a sudden looks over to the side at a place where no one's standing and then starts talking and then comes back and says, well, we agree that. I think that'd be a lot of fun personally. While exploring, you have patient attention to detail alongside clues and special senses that are gifted by your spiritual allies. Allows you to do things like detect threats, detect ambushes, and notice hidden treasures that others might pass by. In downtime, you are going to try to seek out areas that are close to otherworldly entities that bring you strength or comfort. You might tend to grave sites, primeval wildernesses, and that's kind of interesting. We'll talk about that a little bit, and ride the rivers and seas. You might also spend time, if you are attuned to apparitions of wisdom and knowledge, in libraries and temples, and talking to fellow scholars on both the seen and unseen. Others probably find you detached or absent-minded due to your focus on things beyond their awareness, mistake you for being cruel or lacking empathy because you give equal weight to the material and immaterial. So they might think you're cruel simply because you are giving as much weight to the opinion of something they can't see as to the person in front of you, when to you, they're both right in front of you. And you value your wisdom as someone with access to vast troves of experience beyond what a single person could normally accumulate. Initial proficiencies, a lot of this is super normal, so I'm not going to go over too much, but perception, train in perception. Saving throws make sense. Trained in fortitude, trained in reflex, but an expert will. Makes total sense. Skills, I'm sure someone will mention it in the comments on why this is relevant, but I actually would have thought I can see nature and religion. In truth, there's nothing wrong with that. I kind of was looking for occult here. That's just me. Trained in a number of additional skills equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier. Trained in simple weapons, trained in unarmored attacks. Those two make sense to me perfectly. Defenses, trained in light armor, trained in medium armor. All for it, but I don't know why the Animist would be trained in medium armor, but you're also trained in unarmored defense. Spellcaster, not necessarily a magus or anything like that. So the medium armor doesn't make a whole bunch of sense to me, but I don't hate it either. Spells, trained in spell attack modifier, trained in spell DC, class DC, trained in Animist Class DC. All the normal stuff. We'll get to the Animist advancement. I looked through this list and didn't find anything particularly interesting aside from the names. Apparition Attunement, Animist and Apparition Spellcasting, Animist Practice are the things that are specific to your class. They go by different names generally for different classes. You get your Animist feats, third apparition, meaning you get another apparition added to your potential pool of apparitions. Then you get increases to spellcaster. Like I said, nothing in here is particularly amazing. We get intermediate boons and the different boons starting at level 9. And we will go over the boons here in a second, so I don't want to just bypass that, but it is something that's going to be explained a little bit further on. Everything here seems pretty normal, so I don't see any reason to really dwell on this. Class features, these are just the things that you would get and you'd see in most classes. Once again, I've highlighted the things that I find important or different enough to really go over, but everything else is pretty normal. Ancestry and background, totally normal. You're going to have one at first level. Attribute boosts, in addition to what you get from your class at first level, you get the 4 free ability boost or attribute boost, sorry. And then level 5 and every 5 levels thereafter, just like every other one. Initial proficiencies, it's kind of the same. You get the ones that are listed in the class, plus ones that are basically done by your intelligence modifier. And as we go back up here, 2 plus your intelligence modifier. So that's all pretty normal. Now here's where we get to some interesting things specific to the Animist. Apparition Attunement. One of the things I really liked about this, and this is why when I understood the nature side of it, is this particular series of sentences right here. Apparitions are myriad and diverse. They may be human spirits lingering on the border between becoming phantoms or ghosts, divine or occult. That's what I was thinking. That's where occult came for me. Animal spirits with particularly strong connections to the physical world, but lacking the malice that would spur a transition into true undeath. That's where I get the nature. This is also the nature, and I love this part. Manifestations of natural locations, grown thought and purpose over time. So if you have something that people revere, and you can think of it in the modern world as, the 7 wonders of the world, the Great Pyramids, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, or, more modern things, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, some of the volcanoes in Iceland. I mean, these are things that people come to visit and almost revere, so they would gain their own manifestations, which I really like. I like the flavor of that. And a variety of other such entities. So here's where we get to a little bit of mechanics. Each day during your daily preparations, you choose 2 apparitions from the list of apparitions. It says on page 12. We'll get to page 12 in a second. To attune to. Of these, choose one to be your primary apparition. So you do pick one who is kind of your base apparition. Your primary apparition grants you even further power in the form of a unique vessel focus spell, and when you are a higher level, a unique avatar form. So whoever is your primary apparition is the one that you get the vessel focus spell and the avatar form from. If you are a sage, then you are going to have less of a pool to choose from, and your primary apparition is stronger. Where if you're a channeler, you can do that whirl and you can go ahead and pick a new primary apparition. Another one that I thought was interesting was when you refocus, you can change which of your currently attuned apparitions is your primary apparition, selecting from any of the apparitions you attune during your daily preparations. So at first level, you'll have the 2. All your apparitions typically remain attuned to you until your next daily preparations, but some animist abilities can temporarily disperse them, usually in exchange for a powerful boon. So you can disperse that until your next daily preparation in order to get a big boon out of them, but you're going to lose that apparition for the rest of your adventuring day. So when we see that here in this last sentence, when you disperse your primary apparition, your remaining apparition becomes your next primary apparition. So I find that very interesting. We're going to see a little bit this more when we get to page 5, which is coming up. But when you refocus, if you have the apparition whirl, you can switch out your primary apparition. Basically, if you're a channeler, but if you're a sage, you have to do it outside of combat in a 10-minute refocusing in order to change your primary apparition. So then there's Animist and Apparition spellcasting. And this is what we were talking about sort of at the beginning, where there are 2 different types of spellcasting. You both learn and prepare spells from the divine tradition yourself. So this is just like a normal spell book. And you also channel the knowledge and power of your attuned apparition, gaining spell slots and a repertoire of spells from them that you can cast spontaneously. So you're a mix of both types of spellcasters. Super interesting concept for me. And then a little bit more flavor here for me is, as an animist, your incantations might be reciting relevant snippets of legends, stories passed down orally, or they might see you calling nearby spirits to honor their ancient vows. Your gestures could take the form of elegant dances or full body convulsions as generation of memories and otherworldly energies surge through you. So you could do a Tower of Babel thing and people quivering, or you could tell tales in order to evoke these particular things to come out, or you could maybe call the spirits to it. Just, there's so much flavor in that group of sentences that it's just fantastic to me. Now, since your key attribute is wisdom, what you'd think, your spell attack modifiers and spell DC, use your wisdom modifier. Then you have the Animist spellcasting. Each day you prepare 1 first rank spell and 2 cantrips from among the common spells in the divine spell list, or from other divine spells to which you gain access and learn via Learn a Spell. So if you have other feats that allow you to go outside of the divine spell list, cool. But these ones here are basically going to be from the divine spell list, common ones, and ones that you learn through the Learn a Spell action. These prepared spells remain available to you until you cast them or until you prepare your spells again. Now, the other side of the coin is the Apparition spellcasting. So you gain additional spell slots and a spell repertoire from your attuned apparitions. At first level, you cast 1 first rank apparition spell per day. You must have the spell in your apparition spell repertoire to cast it, and this is a collection of spells granted to you by all your attuned apparitions. Any of the spells that aren't normally on the divine list are still divine spells if you cast them this way. So regardless of how they might be listed, they are going to be classed as a divine spell. Really interesting. Heightened spells. There's a little bit here, but it's kind of what you would expect. When you gain spell slots of 2nd rank or higher, you can fill those slots with stronger versions of lower rank spells. Totally normal. All of your apparition spells are signature spells. That means you can heighten an apparition spell freely by casting it from a higher rank apparition spell slot up to the maximum rank of the apparition spell you can cast. Fantastic that they're signature spells. Nothing particularly interesting about cantrips. You can cast them at will any number of times per day. It's automatically heightened to half your level, rounded up. The normal thing. Then you have your vessel spells, which are specific to the Animist. So your primary attuned apparition can use your body as a conduit, allowing you to cast a unique vessel spell. Use your body as a conduit because your body is the vessel. Vessel spells are a type of focus spell. It costs 1 focus point to cast a focus spell, and you start with a focus pool of 2 focus points. Really good to know. Just like the rest of it, though, you can refill your focus pool during your daily preparations. You regain 1 focus point by spending 10 minutes using the refocus activity. All that kind of stuff we heard before in the remaster. And it isn't just 1 per downtime. You can continue to refocus until it's full again. Automatically heightened to half your level rounded up, much like cantrips. So it's Pretty normal for everything else. Still the same as before, the maximum focus points for your focus pool can hold is equal to the number of focus spells you have, but can never be more than 3. So that is in writing, 100%, never more than 3. Then we get into the animistic practice. At first level, the animist chooses a practice that influences their way their power grows and develops. So you have the two, the channeler and the sage. Channelers tend to associate more freely with a wide array of apparitions as they are naturally skilled at acting as conduits for spiritual energy. So they have the most variety of apparitions. They often associate with apparitions of local natural features, find themselves near, for instance, bonding with the steward of the stone and fire when traversing a volcanic caldera. So cool. Their initial boon is at first level, you gain the Channeler Stance feat, which we'll cover in a second, and the Apparition's Whirl action, which is right here. So Apparition's Whirl, Animist, Apparition, and Concentrate trait, frequency once per round. It is a single action, but your apparitions spiral around you as you replace your bond with your primary apparition with another. So with this particular action, you can change out your primary apparition, where if you were a sage, you have to do it by 10 minutes of downtime. At intermediate boon, at 9th level, your proficiency rank for fortitude saves increases to master. When you roll a success on a will save, you gain a critical success instead. And it goes further on. Greater boon, 13th level, proficiency ranks for light armor, medium armor, and unarmored defense increased expert. And at 17th level, the first time in an encounter you enter a specific stance granted by an animistic feat, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to half your level plus 2 for a minimum of 3. So temporary hit points that last for 1 minute. So 10 rounds of combat, that's pretty good. Let me get in the other one, which is Sage. So sages are particularly sensitive to the presence and influence of the spirits of the undead. They can easily detect lingering spirits and help create resolutions between spiritual entities or whatever barriers are preventing them from resting peacefully. I'm trying not to just read this from the book, but there's a lot in this. Some sages might even serve as a go-between for spirits that intentionally linger to watch over the site or a community, allowing them to speak to the people they knew in life. So in this case, you're acting a little bit like the medium class, if you remember that one. Sages are often community leaders or educators and frequently associate with apparitions of fixed sites of power, like custodians of groves and gardens or other apparitions of knowledge, kind of like Samo are iconic. The initial boon, first level, your ability to sync into your apparition is especially potent. You gain the Apparition Sense feat and the Apparition Possession action. We're going to get into Apparition Possession here, but you notice there's not a stance here. Apparitions Possession once per round. Animist Apparition, those are the traits. So you relinquish control of your physical body to an apparition, allowing it to fully unleash its spiritual power at the cost of your own agency. Until the start of your next turn, you are immune to control effects and spells that attempt to influence your actions, such as charm or command. How cool is that? Unless its spell rank is more than twice your level. So that's a good buffer. However, the only actions you can take are stride, strike, cast an apparition spell, cast a vessel spell, or use an action that has the apparition trait. So you're limited to what you can do, but you can't be charmed, commanded, or any of those other types of things, which I think is really cool. And there is one a little bit later on, and they talked about in the live too, that's more martial. If you are not martial at all, you can be possessed by a martial and do much better in combat if that's what you need to do. So your intermediate boon, proficiency ranks in light armor, medium armor, and unarmored defense increase to expert. Greater boon, you gain spirit resistance equal to half your level and a +2 circumstance bonus to saving throws against spirit effects. You are immune to any effect that separates your soul from your body against your will, such as the Seize Soul spell. I'm also interested in the shadow, where the shadow pulls your shadow off. I don't think that would cover that, but who knows. And then your ultimate boon is at 17th level. Whenever a haunt, spirit, undead, or incorporeal creature fails a saving throw against your spells, you gain a +2 circumstance bonus to your AC and saving throws against all of that entity's attacks and abilities for the next 24 hours. The bonus applies only to the entity that failed its save, not others of the same type. In addition, you can select up to 2 apparitions as your primary apparition during your daily preparations. So in this case, let's say you had to retreat from a combat. You have 24 hours in order to go back and basically still have that circumstance bonus to your AC and saving throws against attacks and abilities. Super cool. We're going to go through some of this other stuff, but this is normal kind of leveling things. You get another Animist feat at second. You'll get another one as it goes up on every even number level. Skill feats, same general feats. Spiritual fortitude at 3rd means you proficiency rank on fortitude saves increases to expert. You'll get your skill increases just like you normally would. Get your 3rd apparition at 4th. More ancestry feats. Expert spellcaster, meaning your spell DC increases and your spell attack modifier increases as well. Apparitions awareness. Your apparitions call attention to minute details you might otherwise overlook. Your proficiency rank per perception increases to expert at level 9. Advanced interlocution. You channel power of your spiritual forces and entities with incredible efficiency. So you gain an additional apparition slot for each rank of spells you can cast up to your highest rank of spells -2. For example, a 10th level Animist would have an additional 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rank apparition slot. So that's super cool. We'll go over key terms in a second, but we'll come back to that. Apparitions warning. This is basically you proficiency rank for reflex saves increases to expert. You get your simple weapons expertise at 11th. 4th apparition at 12th. Weapon specialist at 13th. Master spellcaster at 15th, where you get your spell attack modifier and spell DC increased to master. Legendary spellcaster at 19th. Supreme incarnation at 19th. You become a nexus between mortal and spiritual realms, capable of serving as the channel for your apparition to incarnate its full might through you. You gain a 10th rank apparition spell slot in addition to heightened versions of your apparition spells, and you can use this slot to cast the avatar. So this is where you get your avatar. When you cast avatar in this way, you do not become an avatar for a deity. Rather, you primarily attuned apparition incarnates itself using your body, transforming you into the avatar described in your primarily attuned apparitions entry. So this is where you get to have the avatar. Let's go up to some key terms. There's only one that was really particularly interesting. You have apparitions. Those are the spiritual entities. You can read more into it, and there is good stuff in here, but nothing that you wouldn't expect. Wandering. Wandering identifies animistic feats closely attuned to particular types of apparitions. When you make your daily preparations, you can retrain any wandering feat you know for any other wandering feat available at the level you took the exchanged feat. Including lower level wandering feats, you must meet all the new feats' other prerequisites. In addition, the Animist makes use of the stance trait reprinted below for convenience. So they have stance below here. But the wandering feat means that you can go ahead and change up your feats, which is pretty cool for your daily preparations. Now, I'm not going to go over too many of the Animist feats, except for maybe the ones you get for being a sage and a channeler, simply because there are a whole bunch, and this video is already going to be super long. But we'll go ahead and go over those two, and then go over maybe your immortality feat at feat 20. Now, the two I have highlighted here, Apparition Sense and Channeler Stance, these are what you need for Apparition Sense for Sage, and Channeler Stance for the Channeler. So for Sage, you can see and interact with things others can't. And you have Apparition Sight and Impercent Sense that allows you to detect the presence of invisible or hidden spirits, haunts, and undead within 30 feet of you. You can allow a spirit or undead otherwise incapable of speech to speak through you as long as you are in direct contact with it. You can act as a link between disembodied souls and their mortal bodies as long as you're in contact with both a spirit and a living body that belong to it in life. The spirit can use you to return to that body. Now, it doesn't allow you to bring it back to life, but it can assist in restoring a disembodied soul to a still living body. So you can't reanimate or create undead with this. However, as long as the body is alive and unoccupied with a soul, then you can put its own soul back in that body. If the body is accompanied by another spirit or soul, the entity must succeed at a will save against your spell DC or be cast from the body when its original owner is returned. Pretty interesting. Then for Channeler, you have Channeler Stance, which Animist and Stance trait. You enter a stance that allows the power of other levels of existence to flow through you more aggressively. When in this stance, whenever you cast or sustain an apparition spell or vessel spell that deals energy damage, you gain a status bonus to the spell's damage equal to the spell's rank. Whenever you cast a spell that has the vitality or void traits that restores hit points, targets gain a status bonus to that amount of healing equal to the spell's rank. So that's what you get for Channeler, and you get Apparition Sense for being a sage. So there are other feats here, but I don't want to spend 50 minutes covering this. So I fully suggest you download this and read it. But I didn't really see anything else that was super crazy out of this. But the playtest is where we will really find out. So with that, let's move on to just feat 20, because this is kind of where we get into the big one. This is Eternal Guide. Frequency once per week. The spirits who guide you carry your soul back to the community you call home. Choose a single settlement with a population of at least 100 people. Whenever you die and are not returned to life within 24 hours by other means, as long as the settlement still exists and there are no other claims on your soul, such as a contract with the devil, as you do, and nothing trapping your soul, such as being slain by a soul eater, your attuned apparition magically transport your soul remains and all of your items you had worn or carried at the time of your death back to the chosen settlement where you are reborn. It varies between animists how you're reborn. Some magically reinvigorate their physical forms to return to life in their original bodies, while others pass their knowledge and power onto a new inheritor who effectively takes their place in the grand story of existence. Regardless of the exact nature of your rebirth, you or your inheritor are fully restored with your level, experience, and equipment intact 1 week after your death. If the inheritor and their ancestry is different than yours, your attribute modifiers do not change, but you can freely retrain your ancestry feats and other feats that relied on them as prerequisites as part of your birth. So you don't have to basically rebuild your entire character and all of a sudden you have way less dexterity and way more con than you did before because your inheritor is a different ancestry. So very cool there. There isn't a limit to how many times you can be reborn, but if you die before a week is over, then neither you nor your attuned apparitions have recovered enough energy to basically complete the process all over again, and your soul passes to its final reward. And then, which I thought was pretty cool, it's the divinity spell. It's the kind of immortality spell that you get with this. Now, I'm not going to go over every single one of the Animist apparitions. We will cover how to basically read an apparition entry, and we'll cover one, especially one that I thought was particularly interesting. But when you're reading an apparition entry, an apparition skills section will have the amassed knowledge on a particular set of lore skills that cover the areas of interest and expertise. So you will get lore skills when you select one of these apparitions. Apparition spell repertoire. Your attuned apparitions each contribute a number of spells to your apparition spell repertoire, and you add the spells of all your attuned apparitions together to create basically your repertoire, or you can think of it as your spell book, although it is spontaneous, which you cast with your apparition spellcasting. Your vessel spell is the primary apparition, grants you the listed vessel spell at first level. And when you cast Avatar using the apparition slot granted by the Supreme Incarnation class feature, which was a feat level 19, you temporarily fuse with your primary attuned apparition into a powerful battle form of near deific power, using the stats listed here instead of the deities. So super cool, and I do particularly like those things that you can do with an apparition. But the one that I really kind of wanted to go over, as we kind of talked about, Samo has the Custodian of Groves of Gardens, which is her grandmother, and the Vessel spell. But the one that I thought was really interesting, and really I totally think that you should probably look these over and see which ones you like. This one, the Darkened Forest form, that is the one that basically reshapes you into a feral shadow. That was talked about a little bit further up. But the one that I thought was really interesting here is the Witness to Ancient Battles. This was the one that you are a spellcaster, but if you have a Witness to Ancient Battles, it can actually, through its vessel spell, do embodiment of battle, which gives you proficiency in martial weapons equal to your proficiency with simple weapons, a +1 status bonus to attack and damage rolls made with weapons or unarmed attacks. You gain reactive strike or attack of opportunity in pre-remaster, and you gain the critical specialization effect for any weapon you are wielding when you cast or sustain this spell. Now, because it's contrary to you being a spellcaster, you will take a -2 status penalty to your spell attack modifier and your spell DCs, and this can be heightened at 4th and 7th. I thought that was really interesting because you have a bunch of different spellcaster type apparitions, and then they have one that can actually turn you into a melee character if you need to be one at the time. So I thought that was very interesting. And then we have new spells. Now, it was mentioned in the live yesterday that there are new spells in the Pathfinder core rulebook, Rage of Elements, and the Remaster core preview. So if you don't have the Remaster core preview, I do suggest you go ahead and download that, and you can go on Archives of Nethys for the Rage of Element spell list. but these are basically the additional spells that you can get that are granted by apparitions and are listed in their particular listing. So there's Liminal Doorway, which is a spell level 4, which you can draw a chalk doorway on an unbroken surface, which opens into an extra dimensional space. You can interact to touch the doorknob and pass through, and the chalk drawn room beyond the door is 20 feet in width, depth, and height. The space is unadorned and empty, with chalk lines indicating the corners and the walls. If the drawing is scrubbed away, then the underlying surface is gone and broken, and if a creature attempts to enter the space that would put it over capacity, the space begins to collapse. It ejects one creature at random each round, depositing it in the nearest open ground until all creatures are returned outside. Super interesting one. Mist is you call forth a cloud of mist. All creatures within the mist become concealed, and all creatures outside the mist become concealed to creatures within it. So it kind of affects everybody equally, but separately at the same time. You can dismiss the cloud. Phantasmagora is a range of 120 feet. It targets any number of creatures, and the defense is will, and you fill the target's mind with endless images like countless streams and lives colliding with each other. Onrushing information deals 16d6 mental damage to each target, depending on its will save. Once again, this is a spell level 9, so it's going to be very high. And there are the normal success conditions, to include confusion for failure and confusion for a minute on a critical failure, with the normal damage and double damage, and then half damage on a success. Planar Palace, cast is 1 minute, range is 30 feet, duration until your next daily preparations. You grow an extra dimensional demiplane consisting of a spacious dwelling with a single entrance. The entrance connects to the place where you cast the spell, appearing anywhere within the spell's range as a faint, shimmering vertical rectangle 5 feet wide and 10 feet high. You can designate who can enter when you cast the spell. Once inside, you can shut the entrance, making it invisible. You and the creatures you designate can reopen the door at will. And the demiplane appears to be a mansion featuring a magnificent foyer and numerous opulent chambers. You can have any floor plan you imagine as you cast the spell, as long as it fits within a 40 foot wide by 40 foot deep and 30 feet tall. So, a medium-sized mansion. While the entrance to the mansion is closed, effects from outside the mansion fail to penetrate it, and vice versa, except for interplanar teleport, which is still can be used to enter the mansion. And you can use scrying magic and similar effects to observe the outside only if they're capable of crossing planes. You can have up to 24 servants, and so on and so forth. It's stocked well enough with food to serve a 9-course banquet to 150 people. Spell level 7, Veil of Privacy. Spell level 3, cast 10 minutes, range touch, targets one creature or object, and duration of 8 hours. You erect protective wards that make the target difficult to detect via magic. So Veil of Privacy attempts to counteract all detection, revelation, and scrying effects. So it's kind of almost like a mental it's a detection shielding spell. So pretty cool. Now with this, we're going to move over to the Exemplar. So here we have the Exemplar. The Exemplar is Nahoa, and talked a little bit on the live, but we'll cover a little bit of it. But Nahoa is a young human man of the Olehala people, one of the 4 great voyaging nations on the Okayo Ocean that spans Tianjia and Arcadia. Born on the rainy side of the island, Nahoa grew up digging canals for his family's taro farm, taking care of his younger sisters, and ensuring his village never lost the yearly stone hurling championship. He wanted nothing more than an easy life, but he was called to exchange his digging stick for a warrior's spear when the great demon returned, as it had for decades to prey on his home. He faced the beast high in the sky, and even as his spear pierced it, its talons dug into his flesh. Rather than succumb to the venom, he claimed its power for his own and became a Nephilim in the process. So he wasn't born a Nephilim, but he became one. He crashed far from Okayo, where he would meet a Varki woman and set off on a quest across the distant inner sea. And I would admit that Varki woman was our Animist Iconic. So we'll get into a little bit of the mechanics of the Exemplar. The Exemplar, as you would expect from a frontliner, strength or dexterity key ability, and its hit points are 10 plus your constitution modifier. During combat encounters, it's a frontliner. Fight on the vanguard, scattering lesser foes to the wind. You concentrate your divine energy on the right weapon or tool for the moment. And we'll get into the various things you have, but we're generally referring to your icons. When an arrow strikes your skin, it stings no more than a flea. When your spear strikes forward, it can pierce gods. These are the icons, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. During social encounters, This is when you can think of all the demigods and the Thors and the Mauis and things like that. Everything you ever saw in a Marvel, Disney, DC, or comic book you ever read growing up. You naturally cut a larger than life figure. You may use your personal magnetism to inspire others, maybe a lone and brooding figure who speaks only seldom. Your actions and words hang in the air with weight. When exploring, you feel the flow for fate, knowing that your path will bring you to the next quest. In downtime, inactivity rarely suits you, so you seek out additional deeds and quests to spread your name. You might search for creatures to slay, compete in athletics contests, or quest for lost artifacts. You might chase glory, take other heroes under your wing, that your legend may live on through them, or feel the weight of immense expectation and obligation. Others probably look to you in times of crisis, think of you as large in life, and mistake your heroism and capability for pride and aloofness, which is very possible. Rarity, this is the rare class. Initial proficiencies, pretty normal, untrained in anything, not listed unless you gain a better proficiency rank in some other way. Perception, train in perception. Your saving throws, what you'd expect, kind of, although expert in will, maybe not so much, but expert in fortitude, expected, trained in reflex, expected, expert in will. I don't know if I expected expert in will, but I can see it. Trained in religion makes total sense. Trained in a number of additional skills equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier, which is the normal. Attacks, you are trained, and trained. So trained in simple, trained in martial, trained in unarmed. Defenses, light armor, trained in unarmored defense. If they are going very specifically for, we have the Pacific Islander Iconic, I get it. But if you were going for a Hercules or a Thor or like a god, demigod, and I know these aren't demigods, so don't think that I don't know that, but I'm surprised medium armor isn't here, and it is in the Animist. Those are just my thoughts. And Class DC, trained in Exemplar Class DC. Makes perfect sense. Let me get to the level advancement. What you'd expect, except for the names change. Divine Spark and Icons, Humble Strikes, which I think are very interesting. That's how you can get to that poor little spearfisher boy all of a sudden strikes down huge demons because of the Humble Strikes. Exemplar Feats, as opposed for your class feats. Spirit Striking. There are a few little things in here, your epithets, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but nothing particularly kind of super interesting here. But let's talk about some of the things that I did highlight. So you have your ancestry and background, totally normal for any class. Initial proficiencies, totally normal for any class. Divine Spark and Icons, within your soul is a tiny spark of divine power that belongs not to a deity, but something all your own. You can manifest this divine power through special items known as icons. So the icons are linked to you, and this is kind of what gives you that bit of divinity, and that's the spark of divinity. And there are 3 types of icons. There are body icons, there are worn icons, and there are weapon icons. And as you'll see, body icons are basically more defensive, worn icons are utility, and weapon icons are usually for offense. You get to choose 3 icons, 1 of each type, and we'll get to the icons in a little bit. Then we talk a little bit specifically about the Divine Spark. So by focusing your Divine Spark on one of your icons, you empower that icon to accomplish deeds beyond what it could in mortal hands. As long as your Divine Spark resides in an icon, you gain that icon's Immanence effect. You can call your spark forth and place it into an icon by using the Shift Immanence action. And we're going to talk about Immanence in a second. But what this basically means is that as a exemplar, you have a Divine Spark and you have your 3 icons. You can choose where that Divine Spark resides at any given time, and that's how you get the Immanence. If you are wearing something worn like sandals that allow extra land speed, well, in order to get that land speed, you would have to set your spark in those sandals, when if you wanted the extra damage or extra effects from your weapon, you would need to move it to the weapon icon. So you move your spark between your icons to get the Immanence effect. Let's go ahead and go back up to the definition so to talk a little bit about what Immanence and Trancendence and domain spells are. So we talked a little bit about icons already, so I'm not going to cover that. But then you have your Immanence. So at any given time, your Divine Spark can rest within one of your icons, empowering it with beyond mortal abilities. As long as your divine spark is empowering one of your icons, the icon gains the divine trait and grants you the benefits described in its Immanence entry. So if it has multiple Immanence entries, you can gain all of them whenever the icon is empowered. And if an Immanence ability occurs on a critical strike with a weapon, it replaces any critical specialization effect the weapon might otherwise have. It doesn't add to, it replaces the critical specialization effect, which I thought was interesting. Then you have the Trancendence, and Trancendence channels the might of your divine spark through one of your icons to surpass the mortal and enact a miraculous deed. To use the icon's Transcendence ability, your divine spark must be empowering that icon, and immediately after using the Transcendent ability, your divine spark is ejected from that icon, coming to rest in another icon of your choice. So if you wanted to use, let's say, some type of reaction in your body icon that gave you more AC to a certain strike, you use that Transcendence, and all of a sudden the normal Immanence, let's say you got a +1, the normal Immanence +1 that you would get is gone, because that divine spark just shot out of your body icon and went to either one of your worn or to your weapon icon, your choice, but it is no longer in your body anymore. In order to get it back, you would have to shift it back. So kind of interesting there. And then domain spells, your divine power can allow you to command power related to a specific godly domain. Should sound familiar to all your clerics out there. Certain feats grant you domain spells, which are a type of focus spell. Cost 1 focus point to cast a focus spell. A lot of this very similar to any other focus spell. And you gain a focus pool of 1 focus point. You refill your focus pool during your daily preparations, and you regain 1 focus point by spending 10 minutes using the refocus activity to draw energy from your inexhaustible divine spark and convert it into mortal spell casting. Domain spells are divine spells, so both of these are divine, which I thought was interesting. When you first gain a domain spell, you become trained in spell attack modifier and spell DCs, and your spell casting attribute is charisma. So they are heightened to half your level rounded up, and taking feats can give you more focus spells and increase the size of your focus pool, though your focus pool can never hold more than 3 focus points. We're going to do Shift Immanence and Spark Transcendence, and then kind of go to an icon real quick just to see what they look like. But Shift Immanence, once per round, you can shift the focus of your divinity, filling one of your icons with your divine spark. So that icon softly glows with radiant light, emitting subtle chimes as it moves, or is otherwise obviously empowered in a way that matches your growing divinity. I like the fact that they included obviously in here, because it actually allows the opponent to know what you're keying on at the moment. So it's interesting tactically. Your spark is indivisible, so it can empower only one icon at a time. Special, in addition to the above usage, you can also shift Immanence as a free action triggered when you roll initiative. So if you are just getting into combat, you can go ahead and use it as a free action to set you up for that particular thing. So when it resides in an icon, you can use the Transcendence once per round to basically do its special action, and that icon must currently house your divine spark. So with that, I'm going to kind of scroll down here for a second and get to an icon. And we will just do the first body icon here, which is Eye-Catching Spot. It's a body icon. Its imminence is your beauty becomes supernaturally enhanced, distracting foes and imposing a -1 circumstance penalty to melee attack rolls against you. So you are so pretty that they take a -1 melee attack roll. That's fantastic. The Transcend, you just get that. If you have the spark in your body icon, Eye-Catching Spot, then they are just going to be staring at you and not being able to hit you very well. But if you want to do something, Transcend is Captivating Charm, which is 2 actions, emotional, mental, visual. You focus your attention on a creature within 30 feet, overwhelming their senses. They must succeed at a will save against your class DC or be fascinated by you until the start of your next turn. It ends if you use a hostile action against the target, but not if you use a hostile action against their allies. So only if you attack it. So, and I laugh here because every time I read this, I think this is Blue Steel from Zoolander. I think that's the funniest thing in the world. But let's go back up now that we've kind of defined what those things are, because then we have the cool thing that I like, probably one of my favorite things here, which is Humble Strikes. Even the most unassuming weapons can accomplish heroic deeds in your hands when you are wielding a simple weapon. When you are wielding a simple weapon, increase the damage die size of that weapon by 1 step. So just by being an exemplar, you get a 1d6 to d8, a d4 to d6. Really interesting there. Exemplar feats at 2, skill feats at 2, general feats at 3rd, root epithet at 3rd. We'll talk a little bit about the root epithet, and there are basically 4. So with your divine spark bonded with your soul, it became dyed in your personality and quantity. So this is where you kind of define the type of exemplar you're going to be. You could be brave, which your deeds show fearlessness. When a beast surfaces, you're there to fight it. When someone's lost in the dark, you're the first to the rescue. You're trained in athletics. After your spark transcendence of your body icon, your body carries you forward, allowing you to stride up to half your speed in a straight line towards one enemy of your choice. Very cool. Cunning. Why race a hare across a meadow or a salmon up a waterfall? Why face a titan in a test of strength? Wouldn't it be better to best your foes with a bit of creativity? You're trained in deception, and after you spark transcendence of your body icon, you can feint as a free action. This reminds me, all these things remind me of demigods and all this other kind of stuff. This is the Loki one, basically. Mournful. To be a hero is to endure countless hardships and stand where others have fallen, shouldering dreams and destinies in their stead. Through the weight this may reach your eyes, you bear this burden so that those under you can live smiling. You're trained in diplomacy. When you spark transcendence of your body icon, the act has a bittersweet poignancy to it, making one enemy within 30 feet dazzled as tears or memories dance in their eyes. This is a mental and emotion effect. The enemy remains dazzled until the start of your next turn. Maybe not a demigod or Marvel or DC character, but this is the Eeyore one. And then Radiant. Heroes live bigger lives than others, shining so brightly that they attract followers, inspire troops, and change the course of kingdoms. You are trained in diplomacy. After you spark transcendence in your body icon, you inspire an ally within 30 feet to push on, restoring hit points equal to 2 plus double your level. This is a mental and emotion effect. The ally is then temporarily immune for 10 minutes. This Radiant one is pretty much any anime protagonist ever for a hero equivalent. You get your skill increases at 3rd, ability boosts at 5th, ancestry feats at 5th, spirit striking at 5th. So your power can't be contained, escaping in sparks and embers through your weapon as you wreak violence. You deal 2 additional spirit damage with weapons and unarmed attacks in which you are an expert. The damage increases to 3 if you're a master and 4 if you're legendary. So just some extra damage. And of the spirit type. A domain epithet at 7. So this is a little bit higher. Born of the bones of the earth. Your dominion is over stone and soil. The colosseums of creation and the pillars holding up the stage of history's great legends. You gain hefty hauler. Super cool. You can choose for any spirit damage dealt by your exemplar abilities to instead manifest as levitating segments of stone or bone, changing the damage type to bludgeoning or replacing the spirit trait with the earth trait. So this allows you to get around resistances. It's Immanence. Critical succeed on a strike, and the target of the critical hit is standing on a surface of earth or stone. It is driven down and mired in the ground. It's immobilized and must succeed at an escape attempt against your class DC to end the immobilization. The creature doesn't become stuck if it is incorporeal, is liquid, or could otherwise escape without effort, and its transcend is wound the world, which is 2 actions. Earth Transcendence, your weapon pierces the ground below you and opens a jagged rift in a 60-foot line. All squares the line passed through permanently become difficult terrain or greater difficult terrain if it was already difficult terrain, and each creature standing in the affected square at the time of this effect must succeed at a reflex save against your class DC or fall prone, and if they fall prone, they take 2d6 bludgeoning damage from the roiling earth. This damage increases to 46 if you are 12th level and 66 if you are 17th. Restless as the tide. Your dominion is over the oceans, the great source and the ultimate taker of lives. You gain Underwater Marauder. You can choose for any spirit damage dealt by your exemplar abilities to instead manifest as surging streams of water, changing the damage type to bludgeoning, and replacing the spirit trait with the water trait. And your weapon icon gains the Immanence. Is you critically succeed in a strike, you deal splash damage equal to the number of weapon damage dice. To all creatures within 10 feet, the splash damage is bludgeoning and has the water trait. So you basically get free splash damage on a critical strike, and C's claim for the Transcend is Water Transcendence. A roaring whirlpool swirls around you, gathering your enemies together to receive your divine punishment. All enemies within 60 feet must succeed at a fortitude save against your class DC or be swept up to 15 feet to another location of your choice within the affected area and become off guard or flat-footed pre-remaster until the start of your next turn. It's forced movement, so it wouldn't trigger a reactive strike or attack of opportunity. You then strike one enemy within reach. This reminds me of a water kineticist a little bit. Peerless under heaven. For as long as there have been gods, they have made war, and you aim to stand atop the pile when the fighting's over. You can choose for any spirit damage dealt by your exemplar abilities to instead manifest as powerful impacts, cutting slashes, or temporarily conjured physical armaments, removing the spirit trait and dealing physical damage instead. If dealt as part of a weapon attack, the damage is the same type of that weapon. Otherwise, it is your choice. Your weapon icon gains the Immanence Divine Skills at Arms guide your weapon, granting its critical specialization effect for its weapon group, and transcends single action requirements. Your previous action was a successful strike, and you have not yet rolled damage. Time seems to lag as you blur across the battlefield, deciding the fate of many in a moment. Do not roll damage for your strike. Stride up to half your speed and make an attack against a different foe using the same multiple attack penalty. If your second attack is a success, you deal damage to both creatures. If it misses, you deal damage to neither creature. So this is more of an all or nothing. And then we have the last, which is Whose Cry is Thunder, which this was the one that was talked a little bit about on the live. And basically the sky overhead is yours to command as lightning strikes your soul. This is basically the Thor one. Any bonus to saving throws you gain from an exemplar ability also applies against effects with the electricity trait, and any resistant applies to electricity damage. You can choose for any spares damage dealt by your exemplar abilities to instead manifest as crackling lightning, changing the damage type to electricity and replacing the spirit trait with electricity. And your weapon icon gains the Immanence. When you critically succeed in a strike, lightning strikes a target within 30 feet for 46 electricity damage with a basic reflex save. And this damage increases to 76 if you are 12th and 10d6 if you are 17th with a Transcend Judgment from Clear Skies, Electricity, Sonic, and Transcendence traits. As you fire or hurl your weapon, it becomes a line of booming lightning. So you're making a ranged strike with your icon against a creature within your weapon's first range increment, or 30 feet, whichever is further. So it's going to give you the furthest, so at least 30 feet. If the strike is successful, the target and each creature within 15 feet of it must succeed a basic fortitude save against your class DC or take 1d6 electricity damage and 1d6 sonic damage from the Mighty Thunderclap, and increase to 2d6 and 2d6 sonic if you are 12th level, and 3d6 sonic and 3d6 electricity if you are 17th. Then your icon comes back to your hand. Resolve means that your proficiency rank for will saves increases to master, and when you roll success at a will save, you get a critical success instead. Alertness gives you proficiency rank for perception to expert. Divine premonition. Your proficiency rank for reflex increases to expert. Godly expertise. Your proficiency rank for your exemplar class DC increases to expert. And if you have domain spells, your proficiency rank for spell attack and spell DC increases to expert as well. You get your weapon mastery greater resolve, which is your proficiency rank for will saves increases to legendary. When you roll a success on a will save, you get a critical success. When you roll a critical failure on a will save, you get a failure instead. When you fail a will save against a damaging effect, you will take half damage. So it's kind of like a success, sort of. You get your light armor expertise at 13th, greater spirit striking at 15th, which means you get additional damage from spirit striking increases to 4 with weapons and unarmed attacks in which you're an expert, 6 if you're a master, and 8 if you're legendary. At 15th, you also get Juggernaut, where you're accustomed to physical hardship and resistant to ailments. So your proficiency rank for fortitude saves increases to master, and when you roll a success on a fortitude save, you get a critical success instead. Sovereignty, Epithet, and these are some more that you can get. So we'll talk about Teacher of Heroes. Those who make great names for themselves as heroes are called upon to train those who follow them, such as your destiny to be remembered through your progeny. The Immanence is the R granted by your worn icon increases to 30 feet. And whenever you fail or deal no damage with a strike against enemy within your worn icon's aura, you can attempt a recall knowledge check against that target and instantly transmit any knowledge you gain as a result to any ally. So you basically become a knowledge beacon. The first piece of knowledge you gain when recalling knowledge in this way is always the enemy's immunities, if any, or greater resistance, or greatest resistance if they do not have any immunities. And if the target does not have any immunities or resistances, you instead learn their greatest weakness. If it doesn't have any weaknesses, immunities, or resistances, you learn what their lowest saving throw is. So I kind of like how they've stipulated a pattern of recall knowledge, and I assume this is going to go into the remaster as well. Transcend, complete the hero's journey, 2-action mental spirit transcendence, and you declare an enemy within your area of the worn icon's aura to be a heroic test. And as long as the enemy remains within your worn icon's aura, it deals an additional 10 spirit damage with each successful strike or spell it targets you with. Whenever it deals spirit damage to you, each ally within the aura can attempt a reactive strike, attack of opportunity against it, even if they do not normally have that reaction. If an ally within your aura successfully slays the enemy with a reactive strike, they immediately gain temporary hit points equal to their level, which persist for a minute. That one does seem a little bit overpowered, but it is at 15th level. Last ruler, whether your destiny is a monarch or god, the spirit of all true rulers that have ever been or shall ever be suffuses your power and dominion, granting you an unrivaled commanding presence. So the aura granted by your worn icon again increases to 30 feet. Whenever an enemy within that aura fails an attack roll against you, you can attempt an intimidation check to demoralize them as a free action as you rebuke them for their foolish attempt to stand against you. Transcend, kneel before greatness. 2-action mental spirit transcendent. You demand the fealty that is your rightful due. All enemies within your worn icon's aura must succeed at a will save against your class DC or immediately kneel, dropping prone as a free action. Enemies who critically fail their save against this also take spirit damage equal to twice your level. This is a exemplar feat, if I ever heard one. Thief of Moonlight. This is kind of your stealth, if you had one at all. And this would be: your deeds are spoken in whispers and half-believed rumors. You walk unseen, hiding behind stars, capable of taking anything. The lights of the heavens themselves are not safe from your avarice. Immanence. The aura granted by your worn icon increases to 30 feet. Whenever an enemy within that aura fails an attack roll against you, you snatch a fragment of light from their eyes, making them dazzled until the end of your next turn. So you are basically blinding people. That's just your immanence. That's just what happens. And then transcend. All that shines belongs to me. 2 actions: illusion, incapacitation, transcendence. You become invisible for 1 round, then stride. Each enemy adjacent to you at any point during this movement must succeed at a fortitude save against your class DC or become blinded for 1 minute. If a creature critically fails their save against this effect, they are permanently blinded instead. Permanent blindness. And for each creature blinded by this effect, the duration of the granted invisibility increases by 1 round as you hide yourself in their stolen light. So you can make this go longer and longer. It starts with 1 minute, if not permanent blindness if they critically fail, and you can increase it round by round as you blind more. Deific Mastery. You are going to increase your Exemplar Class DC to Master, and if you have domain spells, your proficiency rank for spell attacks and spell DC increases to Master. Vigilant Senses. Your proficiency rank for Perception increases to Master, and you will get your Light Armor Mastery at 19th. Once again, I kind of surprised that a medium armor isn't in here, but that's just me. Now, we've already talked about icons. I'm not going to go over anymore. This is already a super long video. But one of the things I did want to kind of cover is earning your name. Neat little sidebar: as you complete deeds and grow in power, so too will your epithets. Brave Nahoa might become Brave Nahoa, born of the bones of the earth, before competing his destiny as Brave Nahoa, born of the bones of the earth, teacher of heroes. So you and your GM can kind of talk about it, and you could have a huge name that everyone who speaks of you uses whenever they are speaking at you, and you might even place a challenge or an encounter in their way so that, as the GM, so that they earn their epithet in story rather than just get it because they picked up the feat. I really like once again, I like the flavor of this a lot. We're not going to go over all of those, and I'm not going to go over all the particular feats except for maybe the immortality ones towards the end. But one thing I did want to pick out here, and it is in the playtest document, is Leap the Falls. It's kind of in the 2nd level column, but it's listed at a feat 1, so I'm not sure if that's supposed to be 1st level or 2nd. I think it's supposed to be 1st, but because it makes sense as a 1st. You gain the powerful leap and quick jump skill feat. That makes sense as a 1st. But we'll scroll all the way through till we get to 20th level. And at 20th level, a place beyond mortality. So prerequisites: you have to claim advanced domain, which is your 19th level. And frequency once per day, you have at least one focus point in your focus pool. Your domain is not just a representation of your power, but of your divine essence and the potential immortality that essence represents. You cease aging. When you would die for any reason, you can immediately expend all your remaining focus points as a free action that can be taken at any time and regardless of your current condition to survive at 0 hit points. Purge yourself of any negative conditions. When you do, you heal yourself for half of your total hit points. Stand back up in your current square, instantly summon your weapon icon to your hand, and shift your immanence to any of your icons. So you can do this once per day and immediately stand up ready to go. Out, not having to come back from prone or stand up, not having to pick up your weapons or any of that kind of stuff. You are up, half health, and ready to go. So once again, this is that immortality feat that you can get for being an exemplar. Now, I do hope you enjoyed this video. It is super long, and I get that. I normally don't like doing it this long. But aside from breaking it up into multiple videos, I couldn't really see how to do it. It just makes sense since this is a limited time thing, sort of. It's only until October. I just felt it'd be good to kind of get everything else out at once. But I do hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.